Hey, that's what they used to say in the commercials. The best to you each morning. Kellogg's. I'll tell you what else is best to you. Baseball cards from Kellogg's. I'll show you more right after this.
Hey, baseball fan. Time for a little self-care and a few minutes of cardboard meditation. Welcome to the show that features some of baseball's oddest stories and the cardboard slabs that document them. Find peace and joy through baseball cards with your host, the big guy.
All right, this is it. This is the final 15 cards, actually 16 cards, highlighting the 1970 Kellogg's 3Ds. And I just really want to say that I appreciate your viewership. I do. I really like it when you just tune in and just enjoy these cards as much as I like showing them. I think that the 1970s set, this one, is important for several reasons. The Kellogg set is the first set. That's the reason why it's very important. It's the first set they've put together and went on to, I think, about 14 years, maybe 12 years of creating baseball cards by putting them in the cereals. I also think it goes on to paint a really wonderful picture of the baseball legacy that is the late 1960s and early 1970s. So, before we start, can I ask you to hit the like button and to subscribe? In fact, I just did. So I did. I did ask you to like and subscribe. So, if you would, I'd certainly appreciate that. All right, go ahead. Okay, thank you. All right, first up is the Yankee great. It is Bobby Mercer. And at this time, in the early 70s, he was the lone star player on the once great New York Yankees team. Now, there were other good Yanks at the time, but Bobby, well, he was the star, and he was from Oklahoma. So that kind of matched him up with Mickey Mantle. And even though the talent level wasn't the same, that's not to say he couldn't hit. 1972, Bobby hit 33 home runs that year. And that was the most by a Yankee center fielder since Mickey Mantle hit 35 in 1964. Now, Curtis Granderson, a one-time Tiger, he hit 41 home runs, topping that record in 2011. This is Bobby Mercer. The next player was a killer. Card number 61, Harmon Killebrew, also known as the Killer, was that stereotypical power-hitting slugger. He hit at least 40 home runs per season 8 times. And his season best was the year before this card was made, 1969. He hit 49 home runs, had 140 runs batted in, and won the MVP, all while leading the Twins to the American League pennant. Now, with all that power and ability, you'd think he'd be a tough, gruff, kind of a grindy sort of guy. But no, he was a sweet, kind man, a peace-loving person, and people just absolutely loved him. Now, he hit the longest home run ever at the Twins Metropolitan Stadium on June 3rd, 1967. And the ball traveled 520 feet, and it actually broke a couple of chairs when the ball landed. Now, they actually repaired and replaced one of those chairs that it hit, actually the chair that it hit, with this really beautiful red chair. And you could sit in that chair for seasons afterwards. But then they tore the stadium down. And when they tore the stadium down, they put up the Mall of America. And to this date, you can go to the Mall of America and still see that red seat hanging on the wall. They mounted it in the same exact space that occupied the stadium. That's pretty cool. Harmon Killebrew, the Killer. Next ball player, number 62, or card number 62, was Don Wilson, and he was one amazing pitcher. He pitched no hitters in his career, 1 in 67 against the Braves, where he struck out 15 batters, including Hank Aaron, for the final out. And he also tossed a no-no on May 1st, 1969, said to be a revenge no-hitter because the Reds had no-hit his team, the Astros, the day before. Jim Maloney had tossed him a no-hitter, and not to be outdone, Don Wilson came out and he threw his own no-hitter. It was the last back-to-back no-hitters in baseball history. One of the latest Hall of Fame inductees, not just recently, I think it was the year before, and a fan favorite in Minnesota. He was the American League Rookie of the Year in 1964. This is Tony Oliva. And he was a solid slugger, too, because he won the batting championship 3 times. Now, here's a fun fact. Keep in mind, Tony was a coach for the Twins for years. but he holds an interesting distinction by being the only on-field team member to appear with all three Minnesota Twins World Series teams. Now, of course, he played in the 65 series, was a hitting coach in 1987, and a bench coach in 1991. Tony Oliva. Number 64 was Jim Perry. He was a Cy Young Award winner in 1970. The year this card was made, he won the Cy Young Award. He was an All-Star 3 times as well. So he had the stuff. He's the younger brother of Gaylord Perry, and like I said in an earlier video with the Kellogg's 3D series, about 2 videos before, Gaylord and him were on the same team in Cleveland in 74 and 75. And they were the first brothers to each win 200 games. And in earlier 73, they actually faced each other when Gaylord pitched for the Indians and Jim pitched for my Tigers. It's the only time they ever pitched against each other. Tigers won 5-4. Speaking of the Tigers, Mickey Lolich is the 54th card in the series. He is a great pitcher, and I'm showing my true colors as a homer. I feel that Mickey should have some Hall of Fame consideration. He had 217 wins, 3.44 ERA, struck out 200 batters or more in a season 7 times. He ended up with 2,832 career strikeouts, and most by a lefty in the major leagues until Steve Carlton surpassed him. He had 41 shutouts, 195 complete games. Nobody's going to ever have 195 complete games ever again. And he threw 3 complete game wins in the 1968 World Series. He also hit a home run in that series, earning him the World Series MVP. He was a force in the later 60s and early 70s. He should be in the Hall of Fame, says I. Jose LeBoy, or Coco, he was known as Coco, is card number 66. Now, he is a Puerto Rican infielder that was one of the original starters for the expansion Montreal Expos in 1969, like this card depicts. Jose, a solid little player, but he injured his knee later in 1970, and it limited his play for the next 2 years. And when he tried to come back in 73, he just couldn't play at a major league level and was out of baseball. But that is a beautiful card, isn't it? The Montreal Expos just had a great uniform. That's a really nice one. Jose LeBoy. Next card is card number 67, Dean Chance, the youngest pitcher ever to win a Cy Young Award in 1964. He was 20, and he was playing for the Los Angeles Angels. He really had some good years, and I remember hearing about his pitching delivery. He would get the signals from the catcher, then he would turn during his windup and turn his back on the batter, and then turn and unleash a pitch without ever looking at the plate. I think that'd make me pee my pants a little bit if I were the batter. Dean Chance, great ball player. Next ball player I remember more as an announcer, Ken Harrelson, card number 68. He was known as the Hawk, and that was due to his beak. I remember him quite well playing for the Indians, but I really remember him, with the play-by-play for the White Sox. He won the Ford C. Frick Award given out to broadcasters in 2020. He had a great playing career, but, being in 1968, he hit 35 home runs and led the majors in RBIs with 109 and finished third in the MVP voting. He was known for some funny and cool catchphrases as an announcer. They were called Hawkisms, as I remember. And after the opposing player would strike out, he'd say, "Grab some bench." And then when the White Sox would load the bases, he'd go, "Sacks packed with socks." And little bloopers were known as duck snorts. He was a fun guy. Love him a lot. Ken Harrelson. Okay, the 1970 Kellogg set is my favorite set, like I said, but it might be because there's a lot of Tigers in it. Card number 69, Willie Horton was born in Virginia, but raised in the Motor City. He helped with the city championship, Detroit Northwestern High School in 1959. Willie's just one of my favorites and a hero to all of Michigan. I already told you the story about how he saved Al Kaline's life from an earlier Kellogg's 3D video, but he was so much more. You know, during the race riots in '68, Willie went down to where a lot of the violence was occurring, you know, at his own risk. He had his Tiger uniform on. He took a bullhorn out and he spoke to folks and tried to quell the crowd. When he joined other teams, I kept trying to follow him because, you know, he was a solid ball player. And even late in his career, he was, you know, still producing. And he played with the Mariners, Rangers, and Blue Jays. Probably a couple other teams I can't remember. I just love Willie Horton. Great card. Next card is number 70. This is Wally Bunker. And he was the Baltimore Orioles ace back in 1964. Shows him as the Royals here, but he was with the Orioles back then. He was just 19 years old. He finished that year 19-5, was named Sporting News American League Rookie Pitcher of the Year. He was loved down in Baltimore. The Baltimore mayor proclaimed that the pitcher's mound in Memorial Stadium was Baltimore's Bunker Hill, as in Wally Bunker. And he actually went out to Bunker Hill and got some dirt and actually put it out on the mound. Real dirt from Bunker Hill. Nice card. Okay, this next card, there's a variation on this thing. I've tried to look for it. I don't have it. It's number 71. It's the great Bob Gibson. And one card says something there about on the line about 1959 innings pitched is blank. This one has stats. One of the greatest pitchers of the 1960s and one of the greatest ever. He was a fierce competitor. And Cincinnati Reds player Darrell Chaney tells a story of when he was hitting against Gibson. He hit a liner right back up the middle and got Gibson right on the knee. But Bob managed to field it and throw him out. And while jogging back to the dugout, Chaney said that Bob told him, "Don't ever do that again, kid." So when he got to the dugout steps, Pete Rose greeted him at the top and said, "Hey, what did Gibson say to you?" So he told him. And so Pete Rose started running his mouth, yelling out to Gibson, "Hey, leave the kid alone. You don't have any stuff. Take it easy. Leave the kid alone." Chaney kept saying, "Pete, don't talk to him. I got to face him again soon." And he did. So at the next at bat, when he got into the box, Gibson lined it up and hit him in his rib cage on the right side. Chaney told Pete to be quiet. Bob was a fierce competitor. He was the greatest pitcher of that time. Got the greatest second baseman of that time, too. Number 72, Joe Morgan. He was considered the greatest second baseman of all time at that time. And he was a part of the Big Red Machine. I keep talking about it. He was very productive with other teams, too. The Giants, the A's, the Phillies, plus the Colts and the Astros. They're the same guys, I know, but different uniforms. We used to, when we were kids, we'd like to mimic his batting stance. Do you remember that batting stance? Well, do you remember how he would flap his back arm? We just thought that was cool, so we would all do it too when we were playing. But the story is that when Morgan was struggling early in his career, teammate, Hall of Famer Nellie Fox, recommended him that he keeps his elbow down too low to his body. That's way too low. So while at the plate, maybe he should flap his arm like a chicken to get his elbow up. And he did that, and that became his famous move. Nice card of Joe Morgan here. Told you this was a set just rife with Tigers. Card number 73, Denny McLain. The last pitcher to win 30 or more games in a season. And actually, he was 31-6 in 1968. I read a book titled You're the Pitcher, which, was about pitchers of that era. Mostly Denny McLain and Bob Gibson and Mudcat Grant and guys like that. But there's a story in there of when Denny was being scouted. He wanted to play for the Yankees, and when the Yankee scout came to the house, he took the couch, sat down, and was talking to Denny's mom. Denny was kind of sitting there listening, but Denny's mom was the brains of that operation for that moment. So that was in Chicago. So they're sitting there, and the Yankee scout crosses his legs. Denny's mom notices that the scout has a hole in the bottom of his shoe. So she kind of hurried up and gave the scout the bum's rush and told Denny, "You're never going to play for the Yankees. If they can't send their scouts out with good shoes without holes in them, they're never going to be able to afford you." Just because he had a hole in his shoe, Denny didn't get to play with the Yanks. That's what I'm calling it. Card number 74 is one of my favorite cards from the series. And I'm not my favorite player, but my favorite cards because it's of the Seattle Pilots, that one-year team. This is number 74, Tommy Harper. I mentioned him earlier in one of these videos because he was a teammate of Willie Stargell in Alameda, California. Tommy was productive for a lot of teams. He was known for being the first player to come at bat for the Seattle Pilots in the first game ever. He was also the third pick in the '68 expansion draft. And Tommy was also the first Pilot to record a hit as he ripped a double to the left field wall. And he also was the first Pilot to ever score a run. So he was a guy of firsts. And he did that on a home run by Mike Hegan. But doesn't that uniform look pretty cool? It's got that braid, the officer's braid on the bill of their cap. That just was classy. Final card is also a Seattle Mariners, big S, and that braid on the bill. 1970 Kellogg's 3D card, number 75, Don Mincher. Final card in the set. Very productive. He hit more than 20 home runs 5 times in his first 7 years in the league. He was an All-Star twice and was a World Series champ with the Oakland A's. I remember a story of when Mincher hit a home run out of Tiger Stadium. He hit it out of Tiger Stadium. At the time, there were only 21 players to ever do that. And that's it. That is the final card in the 1970 Kellogg's 3D set. I'm glad you watched these. I really had a lot of fun. It's kind of like a trip down the old 1970s with these guys because I struggled to collect them as a little 10-year-old. They were hard to come by. As I got older, like I said in an earlier video, I was able to go through the town, try to find people that had a whole bunch of these old Kellogg's 3D sitting around. Here's a couple of them still mint in the packs. Notice they do have a little bit of a curve to them. Not much. They will curve once I take them out of here. Sometimes they're cracked too, but they are a wonderful set. There's something that's easy to collect. There's not a ton of rare ones in there. And that's a great way to increase your legacy collection. Thanks for tuning me in this time around. I am the big guy. Hey, can you click the like button and the subscribe button? I'd appreciate that. Also, I've got another video coming up of how I'd spend Jeff Wilson's money. And they got a new song in it too, so you got to watch it. And, just to let you know, it's Tattoo Orbits. They're great little cards. You're going to like them. Why don't you tune me in? Talk soon.
Cardboard meditation helps set your mind right. Thank you for watching. Show us your appreciation by clicking the like and subscribe button. Ring the bell while you're at it so you'll know when we upload a new story.